Okay, hey Rosalinda, hey Elizabeth, hi Kylie, hi everyone. So today I want to talk about storytelling and fear and trauma. This week's topic we're talking all about fear. So maybe some of you guys have noticed everyone at Night Owl Nation have been posting stories about their fear. Now, hi Wrestles Marketing. Okay, so what a couple of things I want to talk about before we start. One, so trauma and fear is part of what makes you you, right? So it's the reason why trauma and storytelling is so important. Hey Yasmin, is because think of it like this, right? There's like a piece of marble, right, or piece of ice, or something like that, and it just everyone starts with this chunk of ice, right? And then you chisel away, and you chisel away, and then after you chisel away all this thing becomes like this statue. Do you understand what I mean? So you're like this piece of rock, and every time there's a trauma, every time there's a little story that happens in your life, you're chiseling away, chiseling away, chiseling it, and after what you chisel away all of these things, is what ends up happening is you. So that's the real you, right? But there can't be the real you without those trauma. Hi Sarah, hey Reggie, and hi everyone. Hello everyone that's just joining in. Okay, so yeah, so if you have any questions about this week's topic, which is trauma, fear, like a story of trauma or fear or something like that, go ahead and put your question in the question sticker here, and then I'll answer them. And if you have and if you go in there and you vote up the questions, I'll answer those first. There was something else I wanted to talk about today. Oh, here's what I wanted to talk about because this is something that the question that I've been getting in our carousel class. So when you make a carousel, so what I tell people to do is when you make a carousel, do a 1 second test, right? So every time you swipe a carousel, like spend 1 second on each slide, right? So 1 second, 1 second, 1 second. So within 10 seconds, you should be able to get through the carousel. And that's the 1 second test, right? And in order to do this carousel, you have to make it really, really short. You have to make the carousel, the copy really short. But a lot of people have trouble doing that because, so here's what I want to say. If you want to be authentic in your content and you want to just make whatever content you want to write long captions, long carousels, and do whatever you want, go ahead and do that because that's going to attract your audience, right? But those posts are never going to go viral. If you want something to go viral, then you have to make it short and you have to make those carousels. So that's why what I do is I post carousels, but I also post longer like videos and things like that too, because those carousels are meant to go viral, right? So here's the thing. When I first started making those carousels, all during like 2 years ago, I did the same thing. Like go back to my original carousel all the way in the beginning. This is what happens to you, okay? You're gonna make that carousel, and then like whenever you make content, okay. I want to talk about the concept of kill your darlings, right? So because everybody has too much problem saying too much. That's the biggest problem on social media, is that people say too much, right? Like everything has to be shortened down. So when people make those carousels, they write a lot on those carousels. And the reason why you do that, and the reason why I did that all the way in the beginning too. And the reason why I did that all the way in the beginning is because in my mind, I'm thinking about, oh, who's going to be reading this, right? So in my mind, maybe I'm thinking, oh, what if like Chris Do is reading this, or what if so and so is reading this, or what if so and so. So all I'm thinking is I'm thinking about whoever I'm thinking about in my mind when I make that content is who I'm gonna cater to. So what's gonna end up happening is in the beginning, when I was making those carousels, I'm like, no, I can't say this because then somebody's gonna say that. Like for example, the carousel that I put up yesterday with the bus. Like, but like for example, I knew for a fact that somebody's gonna be like, but here in the UK, it's on the doors on the right side, or we drive on the right side, or here in whatever in Japan we drive on the right side, or whatever it is, right? There's always exceptions. There's always nuances. There's always these tiny little details to every story you want to tell, all the carousels you want to make. I understand. I understand you want to talk about all those nuances, and I understand you want to talk about all those little things because you're afraid that then some smartass is gonna mention this, some troll's gonna mention that, and so you want to cover all the grounds, right? And that's what I was doing. And then I will post it, and I'll get those comments, right? And I'm like, next time I have to include like, and so what I was doing was I was letting my audience drive my content, and more importantly, I was letting those unnecessary comments drive my content. Like even though 99% of people love my content, the 1% of people that are like, what about this? What about this? What about that? Oh, you forgot. Those people were ruining my content because subconsciously when I'm making content, I'm trying to cater to those people. So I'm like, but I need to talk about this. I need to add this because then otherwise people are going to say that. And then I need to add this. I need to add this. And then by the time you're done adding all of that shit, it becomes this long ass fucking carousel. And now you're losing 99% of your audience because you're trying to cater to that 1% audience. And you don't even do it like knowingly. You do it subconsciously. And that's what I was doing in the beginning 2 years ago. And then I caught myself. I'm like, oh fuck, I'm doing that. I'm trying to cater to this negative comments that I'm not doing my content justice. So I started shortening everything. And now I'm like, I don't give a fuck. Like if those people come and say, make those comments, that doesn't really bother. Like it doesn't bother me at all because I know I didn't make content for them. So that's something I wanted to talk about regarding Kill Your Darlings. Okay. Let's go into questions. Guys, if you have questions for me, yes, if you have questions for me, put it in the question tab. Today our topic is we're talking about telling story of our fear or telling the story of our trauma or something like that. And okay, let's just get started. Okay, how do we overcome the unknown fear of getting started? So, NSC Canvas, all of the fear that we have, I talked about this on last week's Sunday service. All the fear that you have, first of all, I want you to separate fear, worry, anxiety from reality. Okay, so like for example, you're afraid that if you do this, let's say okay, here's a good example that I heard before. So there's a difference between like you have all of these bills that you have to pay, right, and you're broke, right, and you have fear about that, you're worried about that, you have anxiety about that, right? That's not gonna help. Like that fear, anxiety is not gonna help you pay those bills. Do you understand what I mean? Like, yes, there's a real threat of you not paying the bills, and that needs to be resolved, right? That needs to be resolved, but that has nothing to do with your fear and anxiety and your emotions, because none of this is gonna help you solve this. Okay, so you need to separate those two things. Okay, so this is why I say all of your fear, all of your emotions, not emotions, but all of your fear and all your anxieties are actually, not all of it, but most of it is a lie. Especially in the modern society where we don't have to deal with like saber-toothed tigers, right? So what's going on is that fear is your fear of, if I post this, what are these people gonna think of me? What if I post this and this happens? Whatever. What if I post this happens? What if I post? So think about all of those. Just logically think about all of those reasons what might happen. So if you post this, okay, it gets 0 likes. Okay. If you post it, okay, these people are gonna judge you. Okay. If this like think about list of every worst possible case scenarios that can possibly happen if you do it, if you get started, or whatever you want to face, you want to fear, right? And then, 2 things. Every single one of them, see if it's really that bad. If it's like really life-threatening, if it's worth all of the fear that you feel, right? If it's a reasonable amount of fear, right? Because once you lay it all out, you're going to realize how ridiculous your fears are, right? And then I also want you to think about, for each one of those things, what in percentages, what is an actual likelihood that will actually happen? Do you know what I mean? So maybe that'll help you kind of separate your fears from the actual doing, right? Another thing that I talked about this week is one of the reasons why people don't post is because of perfectionism, right? Like they want to make this post perfect, right? Like every post has to be perfect. And I was like that too. The thing is, the way you should be looking at it is like this, right? On your Instagram, on your YouTube channel, on your whatever social media, just remember that 3 months from now, nobody's going to be even looking at the content that you post today. Okay? Like 2 weeks from now, 90% of people are not going to see your content. 3 months from now, pretty much nobody's going to see it, right? Like that's how social media works, right? It's like a stream of river, right? So, and you're trying to make every piece of that stream of river perfect. It's just never going to happen. So I think you should just get rid of that thought right now that the post today has to be perfect, because 3 years from now, you're not even going to be thinking about that post. So your goal is really this. Don't make that post today perfect, but make sure that next year today, this time, that post is going to be perfect. But that post is never going to be perfect unless you post something imperfect today. That's how you get there a year from now. Do you understand what I mean? So the perfectionism shouldn't be today. Yeah, try to make everything with care and love and everything. But the perfectionism should be long term, not short term. Maybe that'll help with your fear of getting started. Okay, next question. Hamza. Okay, Hamza asks, my trauma stories are becoming my sob stories. How to tell a story that isn't a sob story? So here's the thing. The fact that you recognize that they're a sob story, I think is already not a sob story. Do you know what I mean? Because what happens is here's the difference between a sob story and a trauma story. Okay, for example, if you look at The Lion King, right? The Lion King is a lot of the, okay, if you look at most of these movies and stories, most of them have an underlying story of taking self-responsibility, self-ownership. Almost every story that you see, like that's why they say every story is like the Bible, right? Like almost every story that you see, the underlying common theme that you're gonna see is that the hero wants to play the victim, right? It's like, oh, it's their fault. No, it's because of this. It's because of that. It's because of him. It's because of her, right? We don't want to take responsibility for anything. We just want to play the victim until we go through the hero's journey, and now we're taking ownership. We're taking self-responsibility, right? That is the hero's journey. Like all those underlying, right? So Lion King, when Simba is growing, playing with his friends, he doesn't want to take any, like Hakuna Matata, right? He doesn't want to just worry free, just doesn't want to take any responsibility until he has to get over that fear and go take responsibility, right? So here's the thing. If Simba was telling that story before like Nala came and then like, you know, roughed him up and told like made him see the truth, and then like before he see his dad in the clouds, and you know goes back to goes back to Pleasure Rock or whatever, right? Before he does all of that, before he becomes the hero, imagine he told a story. Imagine that story ended with Hakuna Matata. Imagine Lion King ended with Hakuna Matata. At that moment, that's a sob story. Do you understand what I mean? Because we're just saying, hey, it's not our fault. It's the Uncle Scar's fault, and all the world is like all fucked up. So we're just gonna live worry free, and Pride Rock. Sorry, we're just gonna live worry free, and we're just gonna be like this, and we're just gonna whatever, right? Like that's if the story ended there and the lesson is Hakuna Matata, then that would be a sob story. Because basically we're saying that it's not our fault. It's Uncle Scar's fault, and there's nothing we can do anything about. That's the end of story, right? So that's a sob story. That's somebody who's playing the victim, right? Once you overcome that and you take responsibility for whatever that thing happened, and then that becomes a hero story, right? So here's the thing. So if you're telling a sob story, and if you recognize that you're telling a sob story, then maybe you are in that beginning stage of, when Simba is like starting to recognize that he needs to go back to Pride Rock to save his family. Like maybe you're at that moment, right? And you need to get over that, overcome that, and you need to take responsibility for it and take ownership of that. And then now it becomes a hero's journey story, right? So sob story is just half the story. It's the story of what happens before you become a hero. That's what the sob story is. So if you're telling a sob story, it means you're still in the trauma. You haven't healed from that trauma yet. Do you know what I mean? Okay, let's move on. Great question, Hamza, by the way. Okay. The Razi group. Yes, getting started on videos. Okay. Yeah, the fear of getting started on videos. That was our kind of assignment this week. I think if you're afraid of getting started on video, what you should do is you should you should start going live. I know that sounds kind of counterproductive, like counterproductive. Like what? Like go live? Like that sounds harder. But no, it's actually it's much harder to stare at that green light and try to come up with something to say and then re-say it and re-say it and re-say it. That's much harder than just going live and acting like you're talking to somebody on the phone or on FaceTime or something like that, and it'll actually be more natural. But anyway, I saw that somebody did that this week. Okay, another question from Hamza. Hara's son does research for his content creation. So the way I do my content is like this. Every time I see something, let's say I saw a documentary. Let me think of a good example. Yeah, I thought of some. I had something the other day, but I forgot. Okay. So what happens is when I'm listening to a podcast, watching a YouTube video or something like that, and I come across a piece of information or story or something like that, which I tie a connection to, either a lesson, a business lesson about marketing, branding, storytelling, personal branding, about self-discovery, personal development, doesn't matter, right? Anything that's related to any topic that I'm interested in, once that connection is made, I'm like, oh, that's interesting, and I'll write it down, or I'll tweet it, or something like that, right? And then that all becomes ideas for content. So what I do is, and then from there, so I have unlimited bank of ideas, right? Or connections, right? These connection stories, right? And then what I do is when I talk about this one topic, I know that there are some stories that are related to the topic, so I'll just grab them and then boop, right? And then if there's something that's really good, then I'll take it and I'll turn it into a carousel. And also another thing is when I'm making a carousel, here's the thing, right? About a year ago, I made a carousel about why you should go on TikTok, right? And I did a carousel about the bus and how kids can guess that but adults can't. And then I tied that to how you should just go on TikTok because even the kids can do it, right? I mean, if you guys want to, go back to my feed and look for the one about TikTok, right? And then look at the post carousel I did this week about with the bus, right? And then compare those two carousels. What I did there is I basically took the same concept, the same example, which is the bus, and I tied it to two completely different lessons. And the reason why I changed it this time is because I realized that I can use that example to show you exactly how you don't see something in front of you, right? Like that bus riddle is like a perfect example of how, like, I can prove to you that you don't see something that's right in front of you, right? And then, beyond my eye, thank you. So once I prove to you that that's what you're doing, then the lesson is, like, it's the same thing for happiness. Like you don't see it because it's right in front of you, and you can tie that to any lesson like that. Whatever it is that people can't see in front of them. So that's what I mean. Like, it's just a connection. So I saw that bus riddle thing on National Geographic, some TV show, right? Brain Games or something like that, right? Where they said, they show the bus, and then they said, the kids can find it easily because they don't overthink it. But the reason why adults can't see it because we start looking at other clues like, the street lights and we start looking at all of the other things, and that's why it's harder for us to get it, or it takes us longer to get it. So when I saw that, I understood that, okay, the connection there is the lesson there is that sometimes we don't see things because we're looking too hard and we don't see the answer that's right in front of us, right? Now, let's relate that to life. How many times in life does that happen to us, right? Where we're so focused on, like, how many times do you, like, I don't know if you wear glasses, but if you wear glasses, you're like, how many times have I, like, looked for my glasses only to realize that I'm wearing it, or I had it on my head, or, you know what I mean? Like, or I do this with earpods a lot. Like, sometimes I'll walk around, I'll have a whole day, and I forget I had the earpods in there the whole time, right? Like, sometimes we're just so focused on, so whatever other million other situations in life, right? Whether you're looking for happiness or you're looking for your niche, right? A lot of people do this with their strength. Oh, my superpower is this. My superpower is that I can combine yoga and this and this. Oh, my superpower is this. Then, Hamza, no, I don't write it. Okay, this is what I do. But let me finish my thought first. So a lot of people do that with their superpower, not knowing that their superpower is actually right in front of them, right? So something like that. So I don't write it down. What I do is I either mark it down, like I do write it down, but not like the whole idea. What I do is I'll just write like few words, right? Like, for example, I'll write down like bus riddle. Like, because if I write down bus riddle on a note, I know that I know what that means. Do you understand what I mean? So I like something like that. Or like if it's a more thought out, then I'll tweet it. I'll tweet it and then I'll come back to it. Okay. Let's keep going. Next question. B. Castillo Diaz. How do you overcome fear of failure? Like in starting a business over again and you lose a lot of money. Okay, so I think those are actually two separate questions. Okay. One, how do you overcome fear of failure? Number two is like how do you start a business and like without losing all your money, right? Because what happened is what you have to do is here's what I think. I talked about this in the recent podcast, which is going to come out tomorrow. But if you're worried about money, it's going to be hard for you to build a business. So I don't really recommend people to start a business in order to make money. If you're starting a business in order to make money, like in the next 3 years, it's not a good reason to start a business. You know what I mean? So, and here's the reason why. Because in order to build a business, you have to make the right decisions that you think is correct for this business, for this brand, for this message, for this mission, for the long-term mission of this brand, right? And a lot of times, those decisions go against your immediate profits. You know what I mean? So for example, for me, in the beginning, I had to go into a meeting and say to a client, okay, this project is going to be $30,000. But I feel like if I say that, I'm going to lose that project. But I have to say that anyway. I can't say, oh, we can do that your budget is $10,000. Oh, we can do it for $10,000. I cannot say that. I have to stick to my $30,000, right? Because if I say $10,000, because I need that money, what I'm going to do is I'm going to have to spend more time knowing that I'm going to lose money from that project. And then next month, I'm going to have to take another $10,000 project so that I can make cash flow, so that I can just keep this digging my own grave, keep going. Do you understand what I mean? And you get into situations like that when you try to make money from your business, when you're starting your business. In those moments, you have to be able to put your foot down, and I need to make this decision, even though it's going to make me lose money today. And unless you can make those decisions with clear logic and clear head, you're not going to be able to start a business. And if you're worried about making money in your first year, you're not going to be able to think clearly like that. So that's why I always say the right way to start a business is work your 9-to-5 job that's going to pay your bills, start a side hustle, and work that side hustle like another job. Take it seriously. And then once it gets to a certain point, and once you have some money saved up where you have like a year of runway, then quit your job and go all in on your business and give that business a full year. Don't half-ass it. Like, don't half-ass this. Like, for the next year, you're not going to make any money. But that's okay because you have a year of savings. But during that 1 year, you can really go all out and try to make this business work the way you want to make it work, right? But if you have to keep compromising yourself and sacrificing yourself because you have to pay the bill this month, you're never going to be able to build a business like that. So that's the money part. I think that's a mistake that I see so many new entrepreneurs make. That's why I say that, right? But getting over the fear of failure, I mean, that's like getting over fear of anything, right? The only way that's why there's a difference between courage, like a lot of people think that courage and bravery, oh, you're so brave. Like, there's a difference between courage and confidence, okay? Courage, the first time you do it, you're going to have to go over that fear no matter what. So that takes courage to do. And that's what makes it hard, right? If everybody knew for 100% fact that if I quit my job today and did this, or if I did this, or if I started posting content, if everyone knew for a certain 100% guarantee that they're going to have success, that makes it so easy. Everybody would do it, right? What makes it special, that only few people succeed, and you want to be one of those few, what makes it special, that is that it's uncertain. Do you understand what I mean? And that's what makes it hard. And that's why you're gonna have to get over that fear. And everybody's gonna have to do that, right? And that first step always requires courage. Because you don't know. Like, fuck, you gotta take a leap of faith and you just gotta do it. Maybe I'll lose everything. Maybe I won't. But you have to do it. But once you do it again and again. And then through repetition experience, then you gain confidence. And by the time you have confidence, it's not the fear that's driving. Like, you're confident because, but in the first try, that first try doesn't from confidence that I can do it. Like, that first try is always going to be uncertain. It's always going to be fearful. It's always going to be hard. And every single human on earth are going to have to go through that. And if you try to avoid this for the rest of your life, you are going to have the most miserable life ever. Anyone who's trying to avoid, if you live your life, okay, for the first like 25, 30 years of my life, I lived my life trying to avoid my fears. Oh, I don't want to go out in the cold. Oh, no, I don't want to go. It's scary. Oh, no, I don't want to do that. I literally, I even said to everyone, I'm like, I rather not do the thing I want to do if that means I have to do the thing I don't want to do. Like, that's how much I felt strongly about not doing the thing I don't want to do. Okay? I'll tell you what happens when you live like that. You fucking become depressed. You become miserable. The most meaningful life that you can live, I'm not talking about happiness. Because if you just want to live a happy life, that's a miserable life too, right? If you want to live a meaningful life has ups and downs. And so if you want to live a meaningful life, that means you're going to have to break through those fears. No matter how hard it is. There's nothing no tip I can give you that's going to help you get over that fear. The only person that can help you get over that fear is you taking the initiative and taking that first step. Okay. Let's move on. Okay. Becca Serena asked, how to approach storytelling about fear and trauma journey when there are others involved in the story. Tips for staying tactful in sharing your story without blaming or vilifying others. I think here's the thing, right? That's a really great question. I personally think that if you are telling a story in a way where you're vilifying others, that means you might still be in trauma. Okay? That means you haven't fully healed from that, right? One of the things that I talk about is like you know how you know that you've completely let go your ego is when you're able to forgive your worst enemy. That's when you know how. So the other day, I told a story about me. I told a story a couple years ago about me going into a store and my mom asking me to pick the more expensive one or the more cheap one. And I picked the more expensive one and I got punished that night. I got beat that night. And that trauma has led me to keep buying the more cheap one over and over and over again, right? Now, think about like that story from my parents' point of view, my mom's point of view, my dad's point of view. If they were hearing the story, like they're like, what? Like they're becoming evil, right? But then if you go back and if you tell the way I tell the full story, right? I think a couple weeks ago I did. It's through this conversation that I had with my sister. And the conversation that I had with sister is like, son, that's not what happened. Like you picked the more expensive one, and then you wouldn't stop. You wouldn't shut up about it, and you would keep blabbering on about something else, and then you got beat for something else. Not you got punished because you kept like, blabbering about and being like a cocky little bastard, not because you picked the more expensive one. So you see how like in most stories, in almost all these trauma stories, the trauma didn't happen because there was a villain. In real world, there's no such thing as a villain. There's no evil guy with their fingers when they're fucking evil cat, Dr. Evil going thinking like, "Oh, how can I just do some evil today?" That doesn't happen. There's no such thing, okay? In real life, there is no villain. All the villains are made up in our head. Do you understand what I mean? So if you still think that if you're still vilifying, so the way I told that story is I now I turn myself into a villain, right? Like I'm like, oh, after my sister told me that, I'm like, oh my shit, like yeah. This whole time me thinking like this bratty little fucking kid thinking like that's what happened, and then like I'm blaming my parents for it. In the meantime, that wasn't at all. It was my own fault, and that's probably why that's probably why I got into trouble my whole life, because people probably didn't like me because who's this fucking annoying little fucker, like it actually has a lot to do with that. Made me self-reflect and figure out all of my flaws rather than before I was just fucking blaming my parents. Do you understand what I mean? So do you understand how the same story I can be told if I'm still in trauma and vilify my parents, whereas in that same exact story, once I've completely healed from it, I'm not vilifying anyone? So the suggestion, I guess what I'm trying to say is, if you are vilifying someone in your story, most likely you haven't healed from it yet, and you're probably not ready to tell that story. That's what I would say. And a lot of times healing doesn't happen just alone. Like if it's a relationship thing, right? If it's something that happened with somebody else, like that healing happens like, together, right? you know. But anyway, I'm not a therapist, so I'm gonna move on from here. Okay, next. Hi, Sarah from Paris and Anna on YouTube. Okay. Regal Nashit. I use my trauma to build a product that will help others with their trauma. How do you not fall back and let the trauma control you and remind yourself that you are on the right path? Regal, this is way, way, way too vague of a question. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's when you ask a question like this, there's no way for me to answer it. Like, you use your trauma. So, like, I mean, are you? You gotta give me some detail. Okay, number one, how do you use your trauma to build a product? What product is that? And why do you think that has anything to do with you falling back on your trauma? And let the trauma control you and remind yourself that you kind of answered it there. You have to remind yourself that you're on the right path. I don't know. I don't know what the real question is there, so I'm gonna skip this one. But here's what I'll say. I think that trauma happens in a second, but the healing is a lifetime. So maybe we just need to, like, I think you answered it, right? Like, you have to. It's like what addicts do, right? Addicts have to take it one day at a time. Like every day is a possible that they can relapse. It doesn't matter how long it's been, right? So I think you kind of answered it there. Okay, let's move on. Huma Lien asks, speaking of sob story, to get to hero story, don't we have to phase through several phases, including sob story, right? But how to manage it as content, but not too much, like looking for attention. I think you're looking for attention if you're, you know what I think it is? I think that everybody can do storytelling every single day, all the time. you don't have to think about, oh, is this vulnerable? Is this not vulnerable? Is this sob story? Is this not sob story? But don't even think about that, right? You can just tell stories every day. But most people don't want to. Most people don't want to share themselves fully. And that's the real reason. That's the real reason why it's hard to, like, you don't even have to think about all of these phases and things like that. Do you know what I mean? So here's what I'll say. Your content is like this, right? So for example, I'm trying to think of an example here. A good example that happened recently. Okay, here's a good one. So in Night Owl Nation, one of the things that I wanted to do was I wanted to make sure that it's an ongoing weekly thing, like that. It's because I believe this practice needs to happen weekly. Like it can't be like just one phase at a time, right? But a few of the small group leaders have told me that no, that's not gonna work because people are gonna be overwhelmed, blah blah blah. But I did it my way anyway. And 6 months later, it turns out that like nobody's like a lot of people are not showing up to the thing, and majority of the people that are not showing up, it's because they find it too overwhelming, and it's like they don't know when it's gonna end and things like that. So now we're gonna implement this quarterly thing where there's like a beginning and an end. Okay. Now, it was my ego that was not listening to the small group leaders early on. And I was like, no, we gotta do it this way, blah blah blah. And then like, the market proved me wrong, and then now the small group leaders turned out to be right. And now I'm letting all the small group leaders take over everything. Now, there's a vulnerable story that I just told. Is it a sob story? Is it too much? Is it too offensive to anyone? Is it too digging too deep? No. Like you guys think that sob story has to be some fucking deeply rooted, some crazy abuse story that you have or some shit. Like, no. You have a sob story, you have vulnerable story that happens to you every single fucking day that you don't want to tell because it's vulnerable. Okay? It has nothing to do with, like, whenever you're trying to say, oh, is that too much? Like, whenever you think that way, that means that's not a fucking vulnerable story. That means that's a story that you're like, oh, that's a story I want to tell because I want to be vulnerable. I want people to think I'm vulnerable. There's a huge difference, okay? So, yeah, so that's how you do it. The sob story, the vulnerable stories are the ones that you're doing every single day, but you're scared to share. You're scared to be exposed. You're scared people are gonna, like, you've created this identity of yourself to the world, like this is who Sun is. Oh, everybody thinks Sun is this way. You've created this thing, and now you're scared to break it. So that's why you don't want to tell these stories. Those are the vulnerable things, right? Like don't like people come to me and be like, how do I be vulnerable? How do I? You know what? Here's an easy answer. Don't lie. Okay? Stop using filters. You want to be vulnerable? Stop using filters. There's one. Like, don't clean up before you go live. Here's another one. Like, there's basic things you can do every single day that you're not doing where you're not completely being vulnerable. So do those basic things first. Don't worry about sob stories. Don't worry about fucking, some abuse stories where you are fucking homeless. Don't worry about those things that are like inappropriate to share yet. Do the everyday lies that you're doing. Stop those first. That's how you do it. I still haven't used F-bomb, by the way. Another one from Hamza. What are your current fears and what are you doing to overcome those contingency plans? My current fears? I don't know. I guess I haven't lived life like that in so long. right? I really don't know. I mean, this is not me trying to sound like some fucking enlightened woo woo, some fucking guru or some shit like that. No, that's not. It's just like I really don't know. What are my current fears? What like, you know what? You know what it is? It's the things that happen every single day, right? You know, like it's the little things. Oh, what if I go live and then the internet gets disconnected? But even then, like, I really don't give a fuck anymore. Like, that's the thing, right? Like, I see people that go on Instagram live and they fucking panic over like, oh shit, no, I need to keep that. Oh, I can't just pause. Oh no, I need to, like, they go fucking, oh no, it's going to, like they fucking panic like, oh, the internet's disconnected. Oh, like, I mean, I used to do that too, but like now I don't anymore. Okay, the internet got disconnected. Okay, fuck it. There's always next week, right? Like, it's just like, yeah, I guess little things like that, right? Like, oh, what if nobody shows up to, like, but that's what I mean. Once you've like just practiced it over and over and over and over and over and over, and so like there's like, I think once you've done it so many times, I don't think there's like, yeah, there's like maybe that little bit of butterfly before you go on stage and then it just disappears right away. But it just happens at a much less like those humps are much less. Do you know what I mean? So what's my contingency plans? I don't know. I don't know. You know what? I don't like contingency plans because I feel like having a contingency plan is the equivalent of, oh, I want to make money doing what I love. No, like, no. That's like having one foot in and one foot out, right? Like burn the boats, right? You know, it's like almost like when you have a contingency plan. That's like an artist saying that, oh, I want to fully express myself, but I also want to make money from it. So let me censor myself and let me sacrifice my art a little bit. Let me compromise. Let me make it more producible. Okay, now that's what that is, right? Contingency plan, right? So I don't live my life like that. So the fact that if I had a contingency plan, that means I'm not taking a risk. That means I'm not facing my fear. That's why I have a contingency plan, because I'm afraid. Do you understand what I mean? Like, that's not how I live my life. That sounds actually like a sad way to live life. I mean, not a sad way to live life, but I guess a lot of people live like that. I just could never live like that. I could never play a video game where I know exactly what's going to happen in every step. No, I don't want that. I want to know what I want my next year to be completely mysterious. Okay, Pointless said, after being discouraged at a young age, it has become difficult for me to be confident about my create. I don't know what the rest of that is, but yeah, I think this is most of our trauma, right? As a child, we're told this: you're not good enough, you're not pretty enough, you're not strong enough, you're not this enough. Whatever stories that we learn as a child before we were like 7 years old, that's the childhood trauma that we're playing over and over and over and over and over in our head, to a point when we go out into the real world, it's like, even though my parents didn't mean to wasn't trying to be the villain, I make them the villain, right? Like, we make up these stories. So once we learn this story about ourselves when we're a child, all throughout your life, you're reliving that story again and again and again. So, right? Again and again and again. Like, oh, your mom dismissed you, your dad dismissed you, and then you grow up, and then, oh, your teachers dismiss you. Oh, and then your boyfriend dismisses you, and your boyfriend's gaslighting you, and then your boss dismisses you, and then, like, you're basically living that same trauma over and over. Oh, I'm the type of person that can be dismissed. I'm not important. Anybody can just dismiss me, over and over and over and over, until something happens, right? That's the breakthrough, right? Until the healing happens. And that's what we're doing at Night Owl Nation. By going back to these stories and just recognizing it and reflecting, what we're doing is we're trying to break free of this trauma, of this the same story we're retelling ourselves. And then boom, once you break free of it, you're not just break free of it immediately. Now it's a work every day. You have to heal from it. And then over time. So you're going to have a bunch of new stories, the healing stories, and then you fully heal, right? So yeah, what you're explaining is exactly right. That's what's happening to all of us. So yes. Next question. Okay. The Roland Dong. Had people said to me, but you are the expert, so how can you not sleep well every night? That's the question when I share. When I share, I am human. I can't defy biology, even I have nights I can't sleep well. Okay. That's good. Maybe people have the wrong idea of like the idea of expertise is such a fucking it's if you really think about it, it's such a ridiculous thing, right? Because like if you look at like blue check marks or something like that, just because somebody has some degree, somebody says they're an expert, somebody has a blue check mark, like all of a sudden they're regarded as higher beings or something, their opinions matter more. No, I don't think so. I met a I actually, this is what I come to realize, right? In the beginning, when I was like working in IT or working in design, I was like, oh, most people are actually kind of stupid. I thought I was such a biggest imposter, but when I started working in a corporate job, I was like, oh, like most people here are fucking stupid, right? And then I was like, oh, most designers actually suck, right? And then I thought that was about just designers. But then when I started like coding and I started looking at the development world, I was like, yeah, most developers actually suck. But I thought it was just that. But then when I looked at all the fucking marketers, oh, most marketers are fucking don't know shit. Most SEO people don't know shit. Most copywriters are fucking shit. And then when I look at my clients, like, oh, most entrepreneurs don't know what the fuck they're doing. They're stupid. And then I was like, but surely there's no way lawyers are stupid, right? But when I started meeting lawyers, I'm like, oh, most of these lawyers are fucking dumb. And then I'm like, there's no way doctors are dumb, right? But almost every doctor that I talk to are fucking dumb. So what I come to realize is that it doesn't matter what job you're in, 90% of the people that are in that job suck at what they do because they don't give a fuck about what they do. They only do it because it pays them. So yeah, I don't know. I don't know why I said that, but okay. Next question. Real Brenton Marcus. I used to define myself. I think I dropped the F-bomb there, by the way. Shit. Okay. I used to define myself as sexual assault survivor. This didn't say much about me as a person. Exactly, right? Like if you keep defining like if you keep reliving your story, I'm this, I'm not good enough, I'm not smart enough, I'm not pretty enough, I'm not, skinny enough. Whatever it is, story that you keep telling yourself, like you're gonna relive that over and over and over again. Thank you for sharing that, Brenton Marcus. Okay, 2 more. Okay, the Razi group. How about using nicknames, etc., for sale of simplicity? Using nicknames for what? I'm not sure what you mean. Yeah, I'm not sure what that one is referring to, so I'll skip that one. Okay, last one. Last question, guys. Okay, Coach Sumit Sharma. How should I share my story? I left my job yesterday and I want to start my own company now. Wow. First of all, congratulations. Here's what I think, right? If you guys really want to share stories, the best way to do it is to just start doing it. I would recommend doing this. and it's going to require some courage, right? Every morning or every evening, just go on Instagram Live. Doesn't matter if people are watching, one person is watching. Doesn't matter who's watching. And just share your story. Share a story or share a significant thing that happened that day. Just say, like for you, it's easy to start, right? Because you can just go live and say, hi, I'm Shubhi Sharma. I just quit my job. This is what, like, talk about that story, how it happened, And then what's going to happen is if you do that every day, almost like a diary, dear diary, dear diary, today, blah, blah, blah. When you do that every single day, what ends up happening is there's no difference between that, you repeating your day and what happened that day, and thinking. What's happening is while you're doing that, in your mind, you're processing, you're organizing, and you're like, that's what happened, and then you do that long enough, it's gonna get to a point where, you're gonna you're gonna be great at telling story. You're gonna be great at connecting the dots. You're gonna be great at being on camera. You're gonna be, it's just you just do that every single day. You're gonna be great. So that would be my recommendation. Schmidt. Okay. Thank you all. Thank you for coming. I will see you guys next week. Tomorrow, there's going to be a new episode of the podcast coming out. So definitely check that out. And I'll see you guys next week. Cheers. Bye, everyone. Thank you all for joining.